Okay, so I'm going to kick it off actually. I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to go back to Bill straight away. So I think, Bill, there's a quote on your website, I think, about making great design available for everybody. But obviously, how is that possible for, obviously, some of these projects? They're not coming in cheap. I think maybe the starting price is maybe $100,000. So do you have plans of making that accessible in the future to the average person on the street?
So a business like Archiblocks is one of our biggest barriers is volume. So we look at, I wouldn't say they're competitors in the marketplace, but the volume home builder, whereas their cost per square metre is drastically less than ours. A lot of the reason to that is volume that they take through their businesses. As a business, we produce 30 to 40 projects a year, whereas a volume home builder, we're building in excess of 1,000. So our volume is very, very different. Also, being architects and the type of materials we use in our product, we generally like to know exactly where the manufacturing has occurred, what's occurred in the conditions of the manufacturing, so that we know that hand on heart when we go and sell the products to the clients that they're getting a holistic offering. But then, so the cost of the materials and the sustainability credentials behind that often lift the pricing cost per square metre. But one of the biggest drivers in our business has been architects. We customise a lot of our product. So 90% of our houses or products we design are custom designed. So it's very hard to do the repetition. Do we plan to get there? 100%. So we would love to have the opportunity of creating a 4-bedroom home for $250,000 that hits a lot of the Archiblocks offerings, but it would be a different business. So it would have to be because I believe having that brand associated with an Archiblocks brand is detracting.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the key takeouts and one of the key messages I was kind of picking up from that was problem solving by you two, and obviously putting out those fires and being able to develop and build on that and obviously progress the business at the same time whilst being under immense stress and what have you. So would you put down that as being the main attribute, or would you say that, I'll put this out to Bill first, is that something that's the number one skill you have, would you say, or?
I'm told it regularly I'm very good at that.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think I'm quite good at breaking problems down and just rationalising it. I remember years ago doing a Tony Robbins course, and then I had a Tony Robbins coach, and we always spoke about chunking. And so I'm quite good at then taking big problems, breaking them down and chunking smaller bite size together.
And would you say that is essential for a founder? So those people out there that maybe think, all right, okay, well maybe I haven't got those problem solving skills. Is that key, would you say, as a founder?
I'm very quick with my decisions. So I think if you can break problems down quickly and you can move ahead on a decision quickly, it's never, ever, ever 100%. I'm the first to say in my business, don't come to me for detail. I'm very, very along the lines, if I get 80% there, I'm very happy to then progress. And if I make a mistake, I can always push back quite quickly.
How do you chunk a $6 million a day problem? Just can you walk us through that process a bit more? Because that just astounds me.
I was standing, the worst part of this story was standing at the yards out in Derrimut, and I was watching, we'd had taken all the units outside because we had to lower these cages on. The truck had to leave at 8 o'clock that night to get to the yard out in Dandenong by 4 in the morning because of all the transit, because it was a 5.5 metre height structure that was clearing the Western Ring Road bridges by 100 millimetres. It was all very tight, and I just watched these rain clouds coming in and a scurry of ants, being all the welders on top, trying to get the cage in place. I turned around for a split second and then they were all gone. So this probably a 6-week period in getting this install done, we had moments like that all the time. And so it's just constantly I found my business asset as a business owner then was constantly just putting a positive spin on things. Because if I broke down and said, there's no way in hell we're going to get this thing across, then basically bang, everyone drops. But if I'm finding solutions and finding solutions to problems, then at least people are constantly thinking, oh, well, there's a way around these issues we have. So the solution to that problem was we got cherry pickers with electrical storm coming in, raised them all up. We got tarps from inside the facility. We basically then went round and create little hoods for the welders to sit with a correct ventilation and things coming through. But basically we just created little working platforms with hoods underneath.
Emma, have you felt similar to a situation where you felt similar?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think being in business, I said it before, I mean, problems always happen. I mean, with us, it was our first day of trying to get into business. We'd agreed with our bottler that we were going to, they were going to bottle for us. We had our juice supplies, it was all ready to go. And they were meant to be manufacturing that weekend. And they rang us up and said, there's a problem. We've just realised that our labeller will only handle round bottles and not square bottles, and we just can't do the business, and it's impossible, we're not going to be able to do it. And we'd spent a year working on this, and we'd done everything, spent all this money, and the bottler, who was the only bottler that we had identified who could do this, was saying, we can't do it. And so Tom and I had to get in the car, we drove up and saw them, said, well, you actually have to do it, and you work out a way around it. So we found someone else who could contract bottle the bottles in Melbourne. We put them in a budget truck and trucked them up to Barraged where we were bottling. But I think in being in business, the thing I've learned is there's always a way, and it's the job of the business owner or the manager to drive it forward. I think the thing I don't actually feel now so much it's the problem-solving skills. It's actually this ability that you talked about before of being able to get the team just really working well and efficiently on the job. And the other thing of actually now for me is being able to hire really great people, and the more great people I can hire, the better. And from I feel fortunate in the fact that our brand is quite well known for a reasonably small company, that for me that really helps me trying to hire people.
Yeah, amazing. I've just got one quick question as well. I don't know if it's going to be quick, but anyway, so when I speak to a lot of the people that come to these events, one of the key messages or kind of the takeouts I get from those conversations is people are sometimes constrained by the views of like their family. So the parents maybe, okay, well, do they approve of them leaving their 9 to 5 and things like that? So Bill, you talked a little bit around your brothers and the family business and things like that. And I don't know if this applies to you as well, Emma, but can you talk about managing some of those relationships and some of those decisions you've had to make in the past where it can be quite difficult having those conversations? How did you approach that and deal with it?
As an architect, I think the pathway of any architect is into their own practice. So every architect has a desire that they will become a self-practitioner. So I think from me studying that was always going to happen. Both my parents were business owners. My older sister was a business owner. My brother was a business owner. Then myself. So I think we always had an entrepreneurial spirit within us. And I think if I hadn't started my own business, I always wanted to have my own
that,
stuff.
I suppose.
I always
They'd be asking why.
I always envisaged it.
Yeah.
I always knew that's what I wanted to do. So I worked, I was 28, 29 when I started working with my brother. So I was only employed by other companies for 3 years, 4 years. So it was always my aim was to get out and do something. And I'm a big believer of just do it. Like we make mistakes on the way. I think you all do, but I'm a massive fan of you don't need to overthink things. If you think it's going to be there, there's something there, and just have a crack.
Yeah, and I think Emma, you also just talked about the hardest bit was actually starting and getting it done and getting it off the ground. And obviously, once you get over that hill, then good things happen, I suppose. So, guys, I'm going to put it out to you. So if there's any questions out there, I will go to. We'll actually pass the microphone around so everybody else can hear what is being said. So, gentlemen at the front there.
Hi. Thanks, both of you. This first question is to Emma. This has always fascinated me in the health and diet space. There just seems to be so much conflicting information. You've got people saying, swearing that plant-based is great, and you've got paleo people, you've got people that say that stevia is amazing, and other people say that any sweeteners are terrible for you. How do you assess that when you design a new product? And where do you get your information, and how do you know that, develop that certainty in yourself about whether it's helpful to your clients or not?
In general, our philosophy is balance, that too much of anything is bad for you. and that often a little bit of everything is good for you. I get information from all over the place. I mean, yesterday I was meeting with a naturopath. I mean, we've got dietitians we speak to. My brother's a GP who specialises in anti-aging, and he was speaking to me this week, and he said, there's this study that's come out of China. The Chinese are really good on a lot of nutritional medicine. Did you know that MSG is meant to be very significantly positively related to fighting dementia? Really? Anyway, so I'm now thinking, maybe that could be a good ingredient for some products, but I'll have to see if there's a natural form that I can call it, because I think putting MSG on it wouldn't be good.
Brilliant. Any other questions? Yeah, gentleman at the back there.
Well, I can talk about what we did.
Yeah, that's exactly.
We sort of worked out, we knew we wanted to have juices, super premium juices, and we looked around the world and we saw there was other businesses, brands, there was Innocent Drinks in the UK and Naked Drinks in America, and Nudie hadn't started when we started working on it. So we basically had an idea. And then we sort of worked out the bits that we would need to do. We needed a brand, we needed to have a name. We came up with Emerald Tom's. And actually, Emerald Tom's was actually quite deliberate, even though we were trying to think of something sort of quirky and catchy. And we actually finally realised that Emerald Tom's was actually more distinctive than Boost or Apple, or Tom always jokes Apple was taken. And so it was sort of working out all the steps, and then we worked out what were the key things. So one of the really important things for us was the designer, and getting a designer that we really felt was good. And so to start off with, we worked on the brand and what the brand was going to represent. And we had this. I actually worked with a friend that I'd worked with at the NAB, who was head of strategy at George Pat's at the time, so he was a pretty good person to work with, and he helped us on the brand positioning. And so we then interviewed about 10 different designers, and they all pitched their images and stuff to us, and then from that we sort of basically got the person who we thought was really would be good for us to work with. Like, some are too flowery, some are too cottagey, and that person so that was a really good decision, and we still work with that guy now. He's fantastic. So I think we focused on what were the key decisions, and then went and we needed a bottle. So then we had to find where do you get a bottle from, and the design. So it was sort of working out all the things we need to do, and and a lot of it. Starting a business, there's a lot of waiting around. You talk to someone and they've got to come back to you. So we're doing quite a few things in parallel, but I do think doing a lot of the stuff ourselves. So. A lot of business, you think, it's impossible, I couldn't do it. Even if it's coding, learn coding. I think, learning how to do stuff ourselves and taking ownership, and we talked about ownership, this thing of, as an entrepreneur and starting up, you can go and spend a fortune, if you've got a fortune to spend, and get other people to do it, or you work it out yourself. And, I just think, everyone here in this room, I believe, if you have an idea, you can work it out how to do it. And you talk to people and you read books and you look on the internet and you work it out. And you don't go and spend a lot of money unless you've raised a lot of money.
And just to back that question off, is there, the consumer of today seems to choose things on how crafty it is almost, and what's going to that craft line, and you spoil the choice. Do you still focus solely on the actual core product, or do you also have to think about how that product looks and feels to capture that audience that's not so loyal to the brand? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think customers are. Well, I think they resonate with the brand and they resonate with our brand. So we've just 2 weeks ago we put into the market we sell a lot to the cafes, superfood balls in a jar, a plastic jar. It looks really nice with a bamboo lid, but we sell it to the cafes as an unwrapped ball in a box, 20 balls in a box. And the idea was the cafes would buy it from us. It looks like it's homemade. They put it into their own glass jar, and it's a homemade thing. But because we're delivering to these cafes, we get the extra sale. That was sort of the idea. Anyway, the jar that we sell them is a plastic, really nice, groovy looking thing, and we've done a really good sleeve on it, so it looks great. And we sell them the jar at $15, which is sort of about our cost. Anyway, they're all buying the jar. So this thing that was meant to be homemade looking, they're putting it into this jar that says Emma and Tom's, and they're very happy to do that. So, I mean, I think it's the brand that helps them, but we need to be giving them the product that they want to sell. And we're going back to the stores, the jars are empty. I think, well, this is very good.
Yeah. I think just to jump on top of that one as well, I think what's key to your business as well, and what I've seen from obviously the websites and the branding over the years, is obviously telling that story as well. Like, I think the success comes from being able to tell the story, tell it well. You've obviously worked with a designer that you're happy with, and you're getting that message across on a daily basis through socials as well. So yeah, I think just to elaborate on your point, I think if you can get your story out there and do it well, then it gives you a better chance. So, and the lady in the purple, I think, was the next.
Hi, my question's actually for Bill. Doing prefabrication in building can be quite expensive to set up a manufacturing facility. Not everybody can go up and open a factory tomorrow. How did you manage the costs and manage the growth of manufacture from starting out and with a concept to actually building your first prefab buildings?
Yeah. The first maybe dozen jobs we did were all done with what's called SIP panels, so they're prefabricated panels. So I spent a fair bit of time actually designing everything to 1200 millimetres and then broke it down to 600, 300, 150 and down to 10 millimetres. So heaps of time went in just the development of the drawings of the product. With SIPs panels, we had our own labour crew. We had our own labour crew. So we had the SIPs panels all supplied by other manufacturers. So we basically used that to build up the brand. We then used those first number of products to then talk about architect and builder combined, to talk about the product of sustainability, and then to talk about the prefabrication through modular. So we then spoke about the concept of modular architecture. And then we hired our first facility in Wonthaggi, and then we bought a facility in Wonthaggi, which I settled on tomorrow because I sold it 3 years ago, which is a thank goodness. So it's sort of we've just built over the period, but it's yeah, we've leveraged off suppliers. One of the things I learned through a commercial building company was always use other people's money, and so we've always done that quite well.
Hey, I have a question for both of you. There's quite a few disruptors in your respective marketplace. What is the future landscape of your respective industries, your products and initiatives over the next 5 to 10 years to benefit the end user?
So in prefabrication, when we kicked off in 2012, all the stats said there was like 2 or 3% of the market share was prefabrication. Countries like Japan, prefabrication is a desired product. So there's businesses in Japan that manufacture 25,000 homes a year. Businesses in Europe, 60% of the products are built with prefabricated technology. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we welcome competition into the marketplace because it opens up the opportunity for us to be more broadly acknowledged and accepted. I think the big disruptor in my industry is going to be not through the technology, but through the methodology of the materials. So we look at 3D printing for an example. I don't believe that's going to be gain traction in the next 5 years, but it's definitely something that will. So there's manufacturing plants up in Northern Victoria, New South Wales. So Xlam as an example. Again, they're looking at panelized form of construction. What we do is volumetric forms of construction. There's 3 different types of prefab: volumetric, stick and beam, and and paralyze. I personally don't believe. I think paralyze is a good option, but you're still having to do a lot of building on site. We get to site one day and we leave it the same day, and within 3 days on a really good build, good access, you potentially have a finished home. You know, for me, that's that's the volumetric side works for us. Sorry.
I think for us, there's probably 2 big things that are you know, really going to impact the food and beverage industries. One is packaging, and trying to remove packaging and reduce packaging, reuse packaging. So, you know, I think, that the example of the balls I gave with, you know, no packaging on it, I think that trend will be a continuing one. I think the other one is that I think people are starting to realise the benefit of quality, and the fact that, you know, eating less better quality food is actually much better for you, much more satisfying, much healthier than eating, you know, so much empty calories, over processed food. And I think, you know, it's still sort of more the affluent market that's eating like that. But I think, you know, hopefully, you know, our vision is that, you know, the whole population starts eating in a much healthier way and stop basically, you know, eating all these empty calories, which are, you know, I believe killing them and killing people. And, you know, and it's I guess the third thing is basically the understanding of the importance of the gut flora and its impact on our whole lives, which again, you know, it's what we eat is affects everything. And if we're not eating well, it's very hard for us to be healthy in other ways. So, you know, the packaging, the sort of better quality, less is more, and then the gut health in general.
Great question. The lady in the middle has had her hand up for a while.
My question is for Emma. In regards to your product line, at what point did you decide to stick only to juices and snacks as opposed to going into meals? Because there is a lot of noise in that industry at the moment, and there are a lot of healthy food people that promote it quite a bit. So where did you decide to draw the line, and why?
It's a good question, because we've basically drawn the line because that's as far as we've gone. And I do think there's this thing of, you know, the more we add to the business, the more complex it gets. And you know, trying to be all things to everyone is in general, I think, not a good idea. So, I mean, it's maybe a bit arbitrary. We saw the snacks when I was actually in Europe and in America, and I thought it was a great idea. So we launched these snacks, and that sort of was a test, and it proved that actually the brand stretched and the consumers were happy to follow us into snacking. So we've basically proven that. You know, I sometimes wonder, you know, we could do a real food body lotion. I mean, you know, that would be totally different, but you know, maybe that's a bad idea.
Yeah, good question. Gentleman in the red top there.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. My question is for the both of you. I know the main theme is how to leave 9 to 5, but my question now is when to leave 9 to 5. Do you think that a business can only, you know, succeed if you give it 100%? You have to leave everything, you know, outside, manage your finances, live in a sardine can if you need to, and just dedicate yourself for the business? Or is it healthier for the business that you don't load your own personal financial stress on it? You keep your work, you start a little bit lean, and then only after the business has picked up that you actually leave your 9 to 5 and dedicate yourself?
Well, I mean, I basically always left my roles, as I explained. You know, if I was just to say what I think it's very hard to get money coming in, and if you can possibly do both, which your boss might not be very happy with, but you know, to me that's a less risky method. And to start, but it's quite hard because often the stuff you need to do is in working hours, so it depends on what your job is. But I do think just, you know, starting is the most important thing. So however it is you do it, it doesn't have to be, you know, all or nothing in my view.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. But I do think that once the business is up and going, boots on ground are the most important thing. And if you don't have boots on ground, then it's really hard to manage the cash. And cash is king.
I think it's about having those conversations with a current employer as well and seeing if they may be open to that. Obviously, you maybe got to do some things to sound it out first, but you talked about having the difficult conversations with Lend-Lease, and if you don't ask, you don't get, I suppose, you know, and you put it on the table, you said what you want, and obviously they responded. As an example, there is actually a chap that works for MyOb here. He was at the Series 2 and he's transitioning from one of his roles here. I think you might know him, Basil, I don't know, but the laughing yoga guy. So basically on his business card for MyOb, he has, he's transitioning to his laughing yoga business, and they've been cool with him. He had the conversation and they've been cool with him to basically put that on his business card so people can connect with him in that way. So.
We've actually got an employee at the moment who's unfortunately resigning. Amazing person. But we've discussed just today in a business meeting, would we give her the opportunity of leaving the business and then contracting back to the business as she establishes her own firm. So it's from our point of view, that's a really good way. It takes overhead out of the business, makes her much more accountable to what she does, but also gives her the opportunity of building up her own business and keeping that synergy with us.
Yeah, I've actually got someone else in my team who I think is fantastic, and I absolutely don't want her to leave, but she's told me she wants to have her own business. And so, if the day comes where she says, oh, I really want to work part-time, she started part-time, now she's full-time, I want to go back to part-time, as long as it's not directly competing with us, I think I'd support that.
Yeah, have those conversations. So another question, anybody? Yeah, gentleman in the jacket, the denim jacket.
If you did start all over again, what would you guys do again? And maybe in the same breath, what would you just definitely don't waste any time on if you started all over again and you got this today?
I would definitely be a lot thriftier. I mean, I think, like I said before, we spent too much money. And, I think, that's probably for me the biggest thing that we should have done differently. We would have been in a much better position if we'd really focused on doing more ourselves and making sure we had more cash coming in than going out, and not sort of always thinking, oh, sales will fix it, we're growing.
Ensuring governance is in place, so just all the behind the scenes governance agreements, shareholders, and then really knowing what just focusing on that one product.
And gentleman at the front there, yeah.
Thanks for sharing so much of insights into your business. But I was constantly keep thinking that what was the factor that was driving you to actually running the business? Because you talk about what of the part of the business, which is your products, your food, snacks, the housing, dwellings, structures, and you talk about the processes, how you have developed, how you evolve. But along the time of that 14, 15 years for you, and also life pretty much, what was the factor that was driving you? What was the clarity? What was the purpose behind that? Was that you have so much ups and downs, you still able to kind of stay on the direction, or did you get drifted, or somebody got you back? But what was that driving factor?
I really love the look of clients' faces when they walk into a new home. Like, to me, that's just amazing. So I think maybe it's my personality is I like to please people. But I really get a lot of satisfaction after having happy clients, handing keys over to them, and it's extraordinary the feedback we get with clients when no home, a home. Where did that come from? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I've got two parts to answer your question. I guess the thing was, before going into business and before I even had an idea, I mean, my motivation to have my own business is freedom. I mean, I'd worked for big corporates and I understood the value of working for a big corporate and the power and the entree that you get if you work for MyOb or someone that's known, and everyone wants to deal with you and you get corporate rates all over the place, and it's pretty good. But I just really love freedom. I like the I just don't like the feeling that someone's wondering where I am, and it's just a personality thing. So that's what really drove me to want to be my own boss and to have my own business. And then I guess in the business, it's really, I just absolutely so powerfully believe in the importance of good food and good nutrition, and that it starts with real ingredients and good quality ingredients, and if you don't over process them, they'll be good for you. And so for me, the business that we're in, I really believe in it, and so I think that that allows me to keep going through all the ups and downs. So it's that combination of those two things.
Okay guys, we're going to be starting to wrap this up, so we'll maybe have one or two more questions, but I'll just ask one question based around that a little bit as well. So outside and away from work, what is it that you like to hone in on to, lighten the mood or kind of detach from work? How do you kind of enjoy leisure time? What do you do, or any kind of
the guilty secrets?
I like
any
nothing.
vices that are going to excite this audience?
I like nothing better than sitting with my computer and a drawing tool on my computer and designing a cool house. To me.
Oh, no, that's
nurturing.
I can do that.
That's time to nurture the creativity.
He's such a goody. Netflix, binging on Netflix. Terrible.
So that's like nurturing the creativity side, isn't it? I suppose, and instead of being heading the day-to-day management, I suppose. So.
Yeah, and I find that for me is a massive release, because I'm not actually having to think. I don't do any of the designs in our business, and I actually don't. I don't have what all of my staff use in the business. That CAD program, I've got an old school one. So I don't draw at all in the business, and so I find that to me really relaxing when I can actually just do a design.
That's cool. Yeah, so last question, in fact. Anybody out there? Yes, gentlemen on the end there. We'll have two. We'll have this gentleman and that gentleman. We'll leave it there. Thanks.
Just very quickly, how do you decide if you talk to family members, they give you all these ideas, you look at internet, it gives you all these ideas, and you have your personal ideas as well. How do you choose which, there's so many ideas and you think about it, okay, this can work or this can work. How do you make up your mind? What strategy can you pass on?
Oh, for me, I think continuing to talk and analyse the idea and think about the idea, and eventually, for me, I come to a point where I know I've got the right idea. It's the right thing to do. So until I've actually get to that point, it's researching, and and I think talking to a lot of different people, getting lots of different views is really helpful.
Yeah, and everyone in the business, we take it through the business and we talk about it. We're lucky in as far as we have a business with sales and marketing and design, estimating, accounts, administration and construction and all the rest in between. So we've got the whole plethora of the chain that we can take it through.
And gentleman there on the right hand side.
So between products, operations, marketing, finance, over the journey of from starting from scratch to where you are, which aspects of the business kind of dominated at different stages? Share some thoughts.
For my business, very simple. It starts with design and ends in construction. So if we do, I spend a lot of the time early on in design, and if I don't have boots on ground in the construction facility, then that's where the revenue's made. So that's where I spend 90% of my time now.
But at the same time, you need to attract clients to survive, and then you also need to be financially astute enough to be sustainable. So how do you balance?
Well, we've gone through very good recruiting over the recent journey in particular, and so I rely on my staff and my colleagues, and again we use the word ownership. So if people in the business don't have ownership of their roles, I used to say to people when they'd go and say it only cost $100, I'd say, well, give me your wallet and let me take $100 from your wallet. They never do. So I just really impress upon people, like every dollar is worth something to you as it is to the business, and the more business the money has, then the more we can grow as you know, both the business and yourself. So I really try and impress ownership on everyone.
And I believe right at the start, when I think maybe if you're talking about right at the start, for me, I mean, we did everything. I did everything. I should have done more, but we bought MyOb, and we had MyOb. We were entering our invoices into MyOb. We were doing our bank recs on MyOb. We developed the product ourselves. We thought about how we're going to market. You know, for example, for us, we were making 10,000 bottles a week with 3 weeks of shelf life. So, you know, what were we going to do with it? So we gave it away. We found events we could sponsor. So, I mean, to me, the job of the entrepreneur is to be in charge of all the facets of the business to start off with, everything. You know, that's the job.
Excellent. So thank you very much for your questions, everybody.